let's jump right in to one of our favorite partners in all of the travel space. I don't want to steal his thunder about what Tauck Tours and Tauck Vacations and Tauck Bridges is all about, but I will say they've been doing this a long time. So they've refined and made their processes better and better, and they are perfectly suited at this time with the global pandemic, the way life is going, to be your supplier and partner of choice. They are ours. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Tauck, Steve Spivak. Steve, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today and with your guests. We have had a very long and mutually beneficial partnership, and nobody does it like Bon Voyage Travel. So we're so fortunate to be here today. I'm joining you from the North Shore of Long Island, New York wine country, and it's a beautiful day up here. We are socially distanced ourselves, socially distanced from our kids. My wife and I decided to take a couple of days away and travel regionally where we can. So I'm happy to be here with you today. Talk a little bit about what Tauck does. Talk a little about the current state of travel and where we hope to go in the very near future, and really what the future of travel looks like with Tauck. So this is really not a new circumstance for Tauck. This summer represents 95 years in delivering transformative, life-changing travel to our guests. And here's an interesting note sent back in May of 1942 from Arthur Tauck Sr., the founder of our company, to our guests at the time, which, when we were pausing for World War II, seemed like something that for many people, they imagined we would never travel again. And I have a feeling that right now people have that same feeling, like, when will we travel again? What will travel look like? Will we be able to go? Well, of course we'll be able to go. We are preparing right now for the future of travel. And one thing I can promise is that when we travel again, it will continue to be all about fulfilling people's dreams and connecting them to each other and to the incredible destinations that we travel to. So our status right now, we're currently on a pause. It's only the second time in the history of our company, World War II being the other time, it's only the second time that we've ever paused for this long. And so right now we are continuing to pause through September 30th. When we move into October, in all likelihood, we'll continue to pause the majority of our operations. There are certain tours that we do hope to be able to enjoy. Of course, our great Canyonlands journey to your area of the world, which starts down there in Scottsdale. Our Grand New England journey, which is one of our classics, New England representing the first place Tauck ever traveled back in 1925. And our Cape Cod, Newport, Rhode Island, and the great islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. Those are three journeys we're still very hopeful we'll be able to deliver in October. And then, of course, beyond then, we'll look to our holiday markets river cruises in December. If we're not able to travel this year, we are fortunate to have a full year of robust bookings ahead of us in 21. With the exception of a few tours, we plan to operate everything that you saw on our website, everything that you saw in our brochures next year. And the good news is the vast majority of people who are unable to travel this year moved to the same exact tour they were booked on next year. And so if there's a place you want to go, if there's a destination you've always dreamed of, you can bet we'll take you there in 21. So there are a few core values that are so important to travelers right now. And those are the core values that Tauck was built on. First and foremost, just do the right thing. When you're taking care of people, and that's the primary function of our business, you have to start by always thinking, what is the right thing to do? And especially when the unexpected happens, especially right now when there's so much uncertainty, you have to know that you can rely on a company who's grounded in doing the right thing. It's important to give people a sense of control, give people an understanding of what the future looks like, and for many people, more importantly, what the present looks like. As we've had to cancel journey after journey, as we have to move bookings, we have to communicate what we're facing and what you can expect from us. Next year or later this year, when we get back to traveling, one thing that we want to make sure people understand is, despite the precautions we know we'll have to take, despite the preparations that we'll have to make sure it's safe, our first consideration when we go anywhere, after, of course, safety and the well-being of our guests, is, can we preserve the experience? We don't want to take people somewhere for anything that's not exceptional and for anything that's not beyond ordinary. We want to make sure that the destinations we're traveling to are everything that you've ever dreamed of. And that's what we will do when we get back to traveling again. When we talk about pausing, it's interesting. Many people have thought about this time in our lives and what we're all going through, and they're thinking, well, travel's going to be so much different when we get back out there. Well, how we travel may be a little bit different. Some of the precautions we take, social distancing, the number of, the amount of space we have on our ships, the fewer people on our motor coaches, things like that, that will change. Why we travel remains the same, and our promise to you to deliver exceptional experiences will never change. Here's an interesting photo which goes back to those first Tauck trips in the 1920s and up through the 1940s, and shows you what happened after we paused for World War II. When we came back in the early 1950s, travel had changed, and we became the first tour operator to charter aircraft for leisure travel. And so while on the two different sides of this picture you have very different experiences, both of those represent people whose lives were enhanced by experiencing these great destinations, and that's always going to be the foundation of what Tauck provides. So right now, travel in the future, in terms of what we deliver, will look very much the same. What we're assessing right now is how we restart operations and where we can restart operations, because we know that you and the majority of our guests are anxious to get back out there to see the world. The first priority, of course, is guest and employee health and safety. And so we're working with all of our partners around the world, all of the hotels, all of the motor coach operators, all of the companies that manage the attractions that we visit, museums, the palaces, national parks. All of those partners are contributing to our protocols for health and safety so that you can leave your worries at home when you travel with Tauck. What we'll be introducing to our guests and to our advisor partners is what we're calling the Tauck Travel Well Pledge. The Travel Well Pledge is, of course, about the safety protocols. It's about how we sanitize the coaches, how we prepare the hotel rooms, but more importantly, it's about how we travel together, as Arthur said back in 1925, one congenial party. And the Travel Well Pledge is our commitment to you. We'll do everything we can to make the experience exceptional and the travel safe. But it's also about the people you're traveling with agreeing that regardless of what they do at home, when they join a Tauck journey, they understand the idea of community. When we step onto that riverboat together, when we get onto that charter plane together, even if we're not a mask wearer at home, if that Tauck tour director says, now is the time to wear our masks, everybody does it for the benefit and the mutual enjoyment of the group. And that is what we'll ask our guests to pledge when they travel with Tauck. So the Travel Well Pledge will be all about how we keep you safe, what travel looks like, and how we enjoy the world together as a community. So where will we go when it's time to go? And we're confident at the time nearly enough. We will go everywhere. Tauck offers 150 different itineraries on 7 continents across 5 different brands. Tauck small ship cruising, those incredibly intimate. Oh, I think my internet connection's unstable. Am I clear? I'll keep going. If I'm not coming through, please tell me.
It was a little spotty there for a minute, but keep going. You're back.
Okay, great. I'm back. So Tauck small ship cruising. Those elegant, intimate ships that can access the ports that big ships can't. We carry a maximum of 200 passengers on these excellent ships, two different ways of seeing the world, our cultural journeys and our expedition. Tauck river cruising, traveling the amazing rivers of Europe, the heart of the great cities that are only accessed by the rivers, every day entering a new port and walking off the ship to see the historic and culturally significant destinations of Europe. Tauck World Discovery are classic land journeys, which include North America, Europe land tours, our portfolio of incredible exotics destinations like our safaris in Africa and our explorations of South America, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. And then Tauck Bridges, one that Ryan has experienced firsthand. This is all about bringing the generations together to experience the world through travel. And these journeys are created, built from the ground up by a family company so that families can connect with each other and create memories. Because we all know that memories are much more important than things will ever be. So travel will really start to take on a whole new dimension in our lives when we get back out there on the road. You know, right now, we're used to sort of seeing the four walls. We're used to seeing our neighborhood. When an adventurous spirit takes over and it's safe to travel again, many people will be ready to go. But maybe they'll put off that trip to Australia or New Zealand. Maybe they'll say to themselves, it's time to explore the wonders in my own backyard. And so we know that when we start to travel again, North America and the great national parks of this country and the incredible cities that we have will be very attractive to our travelers. So Tauck World Discovery is all about those classic land journeys all around the world. North America is one of the most rewarding that we travel to. Here on this map, you can see just how much of North America, of the US and Canada, we cover through our journeys. This is really our heritage. You know, back in July of 1925, that traveling salesman set out on the back roads of New England, taking those 6 travelers to experience a world in their own backyard that they had never seen. And that's exactly what we do now. 80% of our North American journeys feature national park, and we provide access to our guests in the park before they open to the public and after they close. Unique access and exceptional experiences are always a hallmark of traveling with Tauck. And so some of the experiences that we offer when you are visiting, for example, the National Archives with Tauck, you have access to that amazing facility before it's open to the public. So you can stand there in front of the documents of our founding fathers and look at them without hordes and hordes of people, without being ushered through quickly. Those are the types of experience. A private jazz concert in Preservation Hall in New Orleans, that's the type of experience that we offer. A float plane flight from Bouchard Gardens landing directly in Vancouver Harbor when we visit the Pacific Northwest. So those types of experiences are why people travel with Tauck. It's all about immersive, it's all about access, and it's all about having somebody take care of everything for you, so you don't have to think or worry about a single thing other than enjoying your time with who you're traveling with and where you're traveling. As we were talking about before, Bridges, you know, this was built by our company because we are a family. And as the generation started to get older, you had younger kids, you had older kids, you had grandparents and parents wanting to travel together. We wanted to create a way that people could experience the world where it was meaningful and appropriate for every age group. So for example, when we do our Bridges visit to Paris on our Bon Voyage France river cruise, we do a scavenger hunt around the Louvre. That way the kids are having fun. They're connecting with the art in a fun and adventurous way. And the grandparents and parents are seeing those classic works of art that they've always dreamed of. Those are some of the ways that we bring families together to enjoy an enriching experience. It's also fun. Travel should be fun, and these memories will last a lifetime. These are all the different destinations that we travel on our bridges portfolio. And it's everywhere in the world you could imagine going in every style of travel. River cruising, small ship cruising to the Galapagos, and of course, our classic journeys around North America, cowboy country, majestic California, red rocks and painted canyons. And I've now done 3 of these with my family. And the most incredible part of it is everything is taken care of for you. So you get to see your children or your grandchildren just soaking up the history and the food and the scenery, and you see that change happening within them, and it's amazing. Another way that we see travel changing as we move forward is people will gravitate towards experiences with fewer people. But this idea of small is big has been a driving force in what Tauck has created now for several years. We know that our guests have always enjoyed smaller, intimate groups traveling together. There are always people who seek personal space to find their own adventure. We know that our incredibly talented staff of Tauck directors enhance the journey, and the more time our guests spend with those people, in connection with those people, the better the experience is. So we have a saying with Tauck cruising, which we call Tauck H2O, that small is big. Small ships that access those secret harbors, those smaller ports, fewer people on our river cruise ships and on our ocean ships. Again, you have larger cabins, more time to find those little spaces to enjoy your company of who you're traveling with. So that dining is open seating and a la carte. All those things that you can enjoy when you're with a smaller group and you have more space. That's what Tauck cruising is all about. And of course, when we enter the destination, we can give access to those places, those very special experiences that only Tauck can access because we do carry a smaller group. So for example, when you go to Paris with Tauck, we visit the Louvre before it's open to the public. When we go to Monet's garden at Giverny, and you're looking out over that lily pond that he painted, you're seeing exactly what he saw because you're there with just a handful of people. There's no crowds and throngs of people with selfie sticks. It's just Tauck there for an hour and a half by ourselves. And those experiences in palaces, at castles, museums, when we're at the Mauritius House at The Hague, you're standing there in front of the girl with the pearl earring by yourself. Because Tauck takes time and makes the investment to find these places and these ways of visiting iconic destinations that are intimate and exclusive so that you can have the full enjoyment of them. So where do we go on river and small ship? Well, we have 9 river ships now, the newest being our MS Andarina on the Douro in Portugal. We have over 32 itineraries and 27 river cruise itineraries just for families, just in our Bridges program. These are the rivers we travel in Europe. So you can see it's pretty much all of Europe. Anywhere that you've ever wanted to travel on a river ship in Europe, Tauck goes. And again, we go in an incredibly elegant, intimate, comfortable way, providing that unique access across every one of our cruises. Small ship cruising, we now have 14 ships, averaging 160 passengers. We have 23 different itineraries, and again, it covers every continent. So if you've always dreamed of seeing Antarctica, you can go with Tauck. If you love the way that Tauck travels on the rivers of Europe, and you've always wanted to do that cruise of the Great Lakes, you can do it with Tauck. If you love that cruise of the Great Lakes, and then it's time for a safari, you can do it with Tauck. Tauck is a style of travel. It's a way of traveling. And once people have their first Tauck experience, they fall in love and they come back over and over again. And these are all the different places we go on Tauck small ship cruising. 23 journeys worldwide. Everything from those incredible expeditionary trips to the Galapagos, all the way to the elegant and unique culture of Japan with cruising the lands of the rising sun. So why is it that people travel with Tauck? What is the Tauck difference? Well, as Arthur Jr. says, the son of our founder, who is now at 88 years old, our chairman, and still very much involved in making the decisions that we do for our guests. If you're making people's dreams, you have to do things right. If you do things right, you'll be successful. And that's a very simple way of looking at a very complex business. But it's what every decision we make at Tauck is grounded in. And so the difference, the research, the knowledge, the relationships that we have that go into finding that access, finding those other family businesses around the world, connecting with docent at the Vatican Museum so that we can have access to the Sistine Chapel when it's closed to the public. Those relationships get us more places that only Tauck can go. And they're the experiences that you can only have when you travel with Tauck. There's the special touches, what we call lagniappes. A lagniappe is a Cajun term for a little something extra. It's something that you give to someone to make them feel special. And those lagniappes, those little extras, are built into every one of our Tauck journeys. Price inclusiveness, going back to that idea of leaving your worries at home. Once you've paid for your journey, we want you to be present in the moment to enjoy the full experience. We don't want you to think about, should I give a gratuity to this person? Is it my turn to buy the round of drinks? Should we buy that optional excursion? Those are never decisions you have to make with Tauck because it's all included. And peace of mind, now more than ever, trust is the most important deciding factor in who you travel with, but also where you purchase your travel experiences. And we know that the advisors and consultants at Bon Voyage are the best there are. And if you work with them and you choose Tauck, we can guarantee you peace of mind as you enjoy the world once again. Thank you so much. And when you're ready, we'll be there to travel with you.
Awesome. I'm ready to go. Can I travel with you?
Gone.
I have already gone, but that's the challenge. Is I want to go again because of what Tauck is all about. And you articulated it really well. And I just want to add on, having been traveled with Tauck, I understand how it all works and can go into that. But I've stepped back during this pause that we're in, and I've thought about all of our partners, Steve, in this space. And man, some of them have had to evolve. Some have had to start from the ground up and say, wow, we've got to change a lot of who we are. But as I think about the 90 plus years of Tauck doing it this way, I don't feel like you've had, now granted, yes, there are certain requirements, safety-wise and other things that you've had to enhance, but I think about the Tauck difference. Everything you just said, things you've been doing for almost 100 years, is really what we all want now. We want to be taken care of. I don't want to want for anything. I'd like it to be taken care of. If there is an issue, there's someone there to help you. There's somebody there to hold your hand if you need it. And if you want the hand holding, that's okay too. So I'd like to just maybe, let you kind of talk to that one last time, just about how you're perfectly suited for travel in 2020 and 2021 as we embark on this new era of traveling the world.
Sure, Ryan. This was a business that was built on the premise of taking care of people, right? It was not, when Arthur started this business in 1925, he didn't think about, well, I'm going to get rich, taking 6 people in my Studebaker, to these villages in New England and to these. He, as a traveling salesman, he was changed by the way people took care of him when he visited their family hotels and their family restaurants. He was changed by the scenery. And so at his core, he knew that if he took care of people, they would come back and they would tell their friends. And so this business was built on that. And we've always worked that way. We work that way with our partners. We work that way with our guests. And that's how this business has grown. We don't advertise. It's all about taking care of people and the word of mouth that comes from doing the right thing. And when you think about this situation we're in right now, being able to go to the best places and stay in the best hotels and have the access the Louvre and to the Vatican. That comes by having a great business model and being great relationship people that share values with our partners. Taking care of people's well-being, that's about responsibility. And because we're a family business that doesn't start with a focus on the bottom line, we actually invest first in taking care of people. And whether it's, we look back to other crises that we faced, and we have what's called a global response team. There's about 50 of us, myself among them, who meet quarterly, and unfortunately it's been weekly recently. We look at events around the world. We look at hot spots, whether it's natural disasters, climate related, geopolitical. We make sure that we're accessing the best intelligence possible to ensure that our guests are never in harm's way and that our employees are never in harm's way. And we also practice preparedness so that if something does happen somewhere in the world, we know exactly who will do what to ensure that our guests are accounted for, our guests are evacuated if they need to be, our guests are connected with their loved ones and their travel advisors, and that they are made safe and comfortable very quickly. When the government collapsed in Egypt during the Arab Spring, the first flight out of Cairo was not the State Department, it was not the embassy, it was a Tauck charter aircraft, because our global response team had gotten a sense from our partners on the ground that things were becoming unstable. We had that charter aircraft there on standby, ready to go. And that's how we approach the care of our guests in every situation. And sometimes it's a minor disruption of, we have to make an accommodation because there's low or high water, and so we have to switch this hotel with that hotel. And on a moment's notice, we can call up the Ritz and say, Tauck's coming, and they'll say, have our rooms. Those are the minor things. But whether it's a small thing or a big thing, how you care for people is where we start every conversation.
That's perfectly suited. Great examples of what we talked about. And you touched on some of the things that I've experienced. And Steve, this is my family. You alluded to the Tauck Bridges cruise along the Seine. Here's our two boys. And what I can say is, by nature, I'm somebody who likes to wander. And so when you think of escorted vacations or things that you're talking about, I would normally say, not my traditional cup of tea, but I loved being able to be a dad on this trip. Instead of being the driver, the parking attendant, the map guy, where are we going? Where's our hotel reservation? Oh, which piece of paper do I need? I could be dad, and I didn't have to be tour director. That's what Veronica, and that's the upper picture of us there in the Louvre. You mentioned this picture came just off of our scavenger hunt in the Louvre, and our kids want to go back because it was a 3-hour day in the Louvre, and you would say, oh my gosh, you didn't see anything. But we saw just enough to pique the interest of an 8 and an 11-year-old boy to say, I want to go back to the Louvre. Who does that? And Tauck delivered on that experience so that my kids have an appreciation for what the Louvre is, to want to go back. And it's just the personal connections that your team made with us. This happens on every Tauck departure, not just the Bridges departure, but I wanted to highlight Stoyan in the bottom right corner with our son, Brock. He was our wait staff on the river cruise. And they developed such a great bond that Stoyan knew exactly how to make Brock's hot dogs, his pancakes, his ice cream sundae, that he would deliver it without it even being ordered. And that's the type of relationships that you talked about. Taking care of people sometimes really is those little things that add up. And this was the last day of our cruise when we were getting ready to get off the ship. And you can tell the embrace that they had. He's picking up Brock. Brock is 8, so he's practically on Stoyan's shoulder. So I know what you deliver on, but we also know you, Steve, and that's something, and your team there at Tauck. And it's not just what you do on the trips. You know our team well. You've traveled with our team. This is our top supplier, our top partners with our advisor team here. And we take them on a trip every year. And you hosted us in Chicago. We had some great food, went to Second City. It's about developing those relationships, not only to deliver great itineraries, but to resolve situations. So we know you and you know us, and we can resolve consumer concerns, client issues before or after or even during a trip. It'd be an easy reach out for us to connect with your staff to check in on somebody on a trip if there's a concern and resolve it. I just want to commend you guys for what you do in the space, and we love the partnership with Tauck. And I do want to maybe transition into why we love it so much for our travelers. There's an exclusive offer. So I want to make sure to share that with you for all of our attendees today, for you guys participating in our Zoom experience. You have the opportunity for the next month to book your next vacation with Tauck, and you will be given a complimentary hotel night that you can utilize on the before trip or the post at the end of your trip to extend your stay in a city. Maybe you end the river cruise in Paris and you've done a for a couple of nights with Tauck, and you just want to see a little bit more. You've got that complimentary night to add on to make your experience that much better. That's complimentary benefits of the relationship that we have with Tauck. So call your travel advisor and let's get going on that. We do have a couple questions. So let's make sure to get to those as we transition our webinar here, Steve. Couple people asked, and you did talk about the all-inclusiveness of traveling with Tauck. That doesn't mean every single meal is on ship or in a restaurant, but if it's not, how do you handle that? And give us some experience in that arena.
Sure. So one thing about Tauck guests is they're what we call culturally curious and very adventurous. So almost all of our guests come to us wanting some free time. You know, they research the destination, they've heard of a great restaurant, there's a small museum off the beaten path, they're tracing their roots. So one of the great things about a Tauck journey is there's always free time built in. And some of that free time includes a meal period like lunch on one day or a dinner one evening. There's a couple of ways that we will handle those evenings. Sometimes we do what's typically called the dine around, where our guests will have a choice of local restaurants to dine in that evening. Sometimes where it's a true day on your own, and I'll give an example of one of our Tauck lanyards. So I was on our Amsterdam to Basel, Switzerland river cruise, and we went to Lucerne for the day. And Lucerne is an absolutely beautiful town in Switzerland, right on the shores of Lake Lucerne. Very, 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 very beautiful shops, great hotels, fantastic patisseries. And that's a day that in the brochure it says on your own for lunch, right? Lunch is not it. Well, it's also an expensive town, and the francs don't go a long way there, the Swiss francs. So as we're disembarking our coach that day, the tour director is standing on the sidewalk, and as you're getting off, he's handing everybody 20 francs. And you go, oh, what's this for? He goes, go find yourself something nice to eat for lunch, compliments of Tauck. And that's just a little something where on a day you thought you were going to have to dig into your own pocket, Tauck's there giving you a little something extra. And so there will be times where built into the itinerary, because we're in a great city like Kyoto or a great city like Paris where there's an evening on your own, and of course you're free to choose a restaurant. And there are times where it says you're on your own, but Tauck is still picking up your lunch that day. Again, curious, lifelong learners, those are our guests. And so we always build in time to explore. And choice, one of the things I want to mention, Ryan, and I won't go on too long. You talked a little bit about your British journey in France, and I went on that same trip Bon Voyage France trip with my son, Hudson. I took him for his 6th birthday. And you can imagine for a 6-year-old, museums and the cooking school, and it can be a lot of orchestrated movements. And on the day that we were at the Pont de Garde, the group is going to the museum at the Pont de Garde. You're crossing the aqueduct, and there underneath that beautiful structure is a beautiful crystal clear river, and all of the local French people are swimming and they're tubing, and the kids are playing in the water. And my son said, that's what I want to do. And that's what we did. And that's what we did. Because when you travel with Tauck, you're an individual who is moving as part of a group. And so what you want to do is how we define your experience with Tauck. We provide you the best of everything. If there's something that you want to do one day that's outside of the itinerary, that is entirely up to you. It's your journey provided by Tauck.
That's outstanding. One more little story of mine. You mentioned Paris, and it just made me remember speaking about the ease that we had moving around with Tauck, and I was the dad. It was great. But when it was over and the trip came to an end and we disembarked from the river cruise, Tauck had our private transfer there. We were headed to the train station. So we went to Gare du Nord. We were going to take the Channel to London and stay a couple extra days in London completely on our own. And I was so relaxed. It was such a great time to get off the ship. I was feeling great. And let me tell you, the panic and anxiety that came over me when we got to the train station and I realized there's no Tauck tour director. Where am I supposed to go? Wait a minute. I'm the tour director. I'm in charge of getting us to the train station with an 8 and 11-year-old. What happens if we miss the train? What am I going to do? I had gone a week without having to worry about that. So that just speaks again to its choice. You're an individual, you're taken care of. Steve, speak to your Canadian departures from, just maybe a little highlight, which you talked a little bit about, Butchart Gardens, et cetera, but Canadian Rockies, maybe the Canada, New England. What's your offerings there?
We cover everything from Canada's capital cities, Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City, on one itinerary to, of course, the Canadian Maritimes. And then one of the great journeys that you can ever do if you love nature is Manitoba with the polar bears. And, of course, in true Tauck style, we get up close and personal. And then Western Canada, the Canadian Rockies, we do everything from your classic Canadian Rockies with Jasper and Banff, and staying at the Jasper Lake Lodge, and then we do some special things like helicopter hiking in the Bugaboos. And that's another sort of classic Tauck story where Arthur Jr., it's funny to be saying Arthur Jr., and he's 88, but when Arthur was an avid skier, and he was so skilled at skiing that one of his adventures in the early 70s took him to the Bugaboo Mountains helicopter skiing. And he said to the operator of one of the lodges, said, well, what do you do in the summer? And they said, well, nothing, we closed down the lodges. And Arthur said, well, what if I could bring you hundreds of travelers to visit these lodges in the summer? And they said, you can't do that. How would you do that? And he said, the same way I got up here to go skiing. And so helicopter hiking was born. And now still to this day, we run our helicopter hiking in the Bugaboos of Canada. And it's an epic journey. We only do a few departures a year, but we do everything from the classics to, of course, the road less traveled. And that's really the Tauck story.
Awesome. We do have a question from one of our viewers who is interested in Europe and the border closures and allowing citizens from the United States into said countries, and how that's going to evolve, and any thoughts you have there. And do you anticipate visa requirements? I know you're not the State Department, but
thank you.
You do have a pulse of what's going on. As you mentioned, your global response team. Can you just address some of those thoughts?
I do, and just to so everybody's aware of how we stay engaged and how we stay connected, and how we also level a certain degree of influence over some of these decisions. Jennifer Tombaugh, our president, sits on the board of ETOA, the European Tour Operators Association. I sit on the board of the U.S. Travel Association. Jennifer's Dan's on the board. Dan Mahar, our CEO, who's Arthur's son-in-law, is on the board of the United States Tour Operators Association. So we are all busy, along with Ryan, as the voice of our industry and as the voice of you, our customers, our travelers, our guests, to make sure that these borders open smartly when it's the time for them to open. And I would say that before the end of this year, the borders will be open again. But I would also say that that is incumbent on us, showing that we are a responsible nation, taking the same level of necessary precaution in our daily lives as the rest of the world has done to contain this situation. And that is not a political statement. That is relative to travel, a statement of fact on what it will take to get borders open again. What I would recommend, possibly, if that's a concern, a lingering concern for anyone, is potential disruptions of border crossing. Stick within the Schengen countries because they will remain open borders. And we have so many itineraries that are within the borders of one country. Our new river cruises in Portugal exclusively, our 19 different itineraries within Italy, our exploration of the Scandinavian region. There are so many places to go where you don't have to worry about crossing borders. But even where you do, if you do it from the comfort of your very elegant river ship, handle the border crossing for you, because there are no border gates on the rivers of Europe. And so that passage is quite easy and orchestrated by your Tauck cruise director.
That's great. One more operational type question for you. Tauck's ability to add on air through Tauck so that it's an really all-inclusive package. And I know the answer, but I want you to answer it. If you don't choose air with Tauck and you choose to go on your own, is there any credits, or is it truly just an add-on to the core price of the departure?
Air that is purchased separately from Tauck is just an add-on. In the instance of these unfortunate cancellations, we have given our guests, even if they didn't book air, we have given them a credit of $250 per person towards their air change fees. So, again, I think Tauck Air is a great product. The reason I recommend Tauck Air, and I'm sorry if this is contrary to what you want to your advisor.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But when you are traveling, and we've all seen this happen a significant number of times, if you're on a Tauck River cruise, for example, and there's a change to the itinerary, or there's an emergency, and you need to change your flights, if you've booked air through Tauck, we can manage your reservation for you. If you've booked air through on your own, and we can't change that reservation, we can't touch that ticket. And that's quick note though, we will never turn away from taking care of you. So if it's an emergency, it's an emergency, and we would never leave our guests to fend for themselves. But in terms of making changes out of convenience, when the air is through Tauck, policies are very lenient in terms of changes. The way we ticket it is very generous in terms of when payment is due. and the ability to help you make changes on the fly when in destination is really what's most important.
Yeah, we look at it too, Steve. We are in concert with that. It's whatever's in the best interest of the traveler, their level of handling a change or a challenge. If somebody is in this position and you don't think about some of the other things that come with a change in an airline ticket, like, oh, I have to change my ground transfers and all that. If you're booked with Tauck, that's seamlessly taken care of for you. The transfer is going to be handled and changed, and you won't even know it's happened. You'll just be ready to go, and it will be taken, booked, and ready to go for you. So we love how Tauck approaches this. So thank you so much for illuminating our viewers today. I know some of our guests, I know them by name a little bit, so I know some of them are currently booked with Tauck, and I hope we've shown them a different way to travel, maybe a different style. Maybe they've never traveled with their grandkids. I would throw this out there. When we went on Tauck bridges with our kids, it wasn't just mom, dad, and the two kids. In fact, some of our closest people that we met were grandparents and grandson, and it was just them, no parents. They said, we don't want the parents. We want to build a memory with our grandchild on our own. It was grandmother and granddaughter who was 16, and for her 16th birthday, grandma said, I'm taking you to Paris for the first time, and I want to be there to see your eyes light up when the Eiffel Tower at night starts to sparkle. That's what her idea of this was about, and it was everything in between. So from a Tauck Bridges standpoint, maybe you've never thought of a multi-generational trip. We did have all three generations next to us at a table. So hopefully we've inspired you to travel, and that Tauck is your next choice. But if not, we're here for you to work through this and check in on our weekly webinar series opportunities for every Wednesday, 3 o'clock Tucson time. Go sign up for something in the future. And before we part, I have to say, go Gators. My friend Steve is a University of Florida alum. It pains me to say anything other than bear down. Go Cats. But for this moment in time, I'm going to give a shout out to my fellow Gator. Steve, thank you for joining us today.
Ryan, it was absolutely my pleasure. And I just wanted to say to the people who joined us for this time, thank you for the gift of your time. And I'm just sorry I can't be there in front of you personally. But your desire to travel is what keeps us doing what we do. And it is so fulfilling and rewarding to be a part of helping you see the world. So thank you for your time and this privilege.
Thanks, Steve. We look forward to seeing all of our guests on our next weekly webinar series. Take care and be safe.